The United States Senate confirmed U.S. Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch earlier today with a 54-45 vote. The confirmation followed Senate Democrats' attempt to filibuster the confirmation, prompting Republicans to deploy so-called the nuclear option, lowering the amount of votes needed to confirm Supreme Court nominees going forward. Meanwhile, U.S. Senator Michael Bennet announced he was against the filibuster effort but voted no on the Gorsuch nomination. Patty, it seemed that Michael Bennet, again, found a way to have his cake and eat it too. He didn't support the filibuster effort. He still voted no. It seemed like a good situation for him, riding a very, very thin balance beam politically. But did he get away with it?
I'm not sure he did. I mean, the interesting thing is, if this was a cause for a nuclear, I mean, we are going to have so many other nominees that really deserve to be bombed before this one. So Michael Bennet, in this case, you know, he had connections through Anschutz to Neil Gorsuch. I mean, Neil Gorsuch is going to be probably the best judge we're going to get from Donald Trump as a nominee, and it looks like Donald Trump will probably have the opportunity to make many more nominees. I think this is one that the Democrats shouldn't have filibustered. They should have saved that so that we didn't have the nuclear option. And I was actually surprised. I thought Bennet might go for him because really, if you were looking at a judge with a great legal resume, Gorsuch has it. He may not agree with a lot of what the majority of Coloradans agree with on some issues, but on others, he is a really thoughtful judge.
David, do you think Republicans will regret going to the nuclear option, not so much as a political issue in a campaign, but the fact that the Senate goes back and forth? And when Democrats have the Senate and they happen to have a president in office, this option is now off the table.
I think not, because if you look at the political, we've only had partisan filibusters over judicial appointments. The first time we had one of those was in 2003, when George H.W. Bush was trying to put people like Miguel Estrada on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. And Estrada was filibustered, as a Democratic strategy memo said, because he's Hispanic. He's extremely well qualified, and he's Hispanic, and if we let him get on the D.C. Circuit Court, then he's may end up on the Supreme Court soon after. So they did their partisan filibuster on some Bush nominees. Then Obama was elected, and the Republicans turned around and also did partisan filibusters on some Obama nominees to the D.C. Circuit, and Harry Reid then nuked the filibuster for all appointments other than Supreme Court. Tim Kaine, the vice presidential nominee, said if the Republicans try to filibuster President Hillary Clinton's Supreme Court nominees, will nuke the filibuster. So the Republicans had no enduring interest in restraint, because they knew as soon as the shoe was on the other foot, the Dems would go nuclear. So why not act while you can? Gorsuch is, as Patty said, a superb choice, probably the best choice that the president could have made. And one of the ways the Democrats' feeble search for bogus talking points was so wrong is that Gorsuch has been a leader in questioning what's called Chevron deference, which is Congress passes the law and then an administrative agency comes up with any interpretation it wants, and as long as it's got some minimal level of plausibility, the courts are supposed to be submissive to that. So it makes the executive branch into the law-making agency, which it's not supposed to be. And the case that Gorsuch raised his concerns in was a case about an illegal alien. And Gorsuch was saying the federal government shouldn't be able to change the rules so much arbitrarily without the consent of Congress, and with the courts just supposed to be deferential. So Gorsuch, far more so than Merrick Garland, who always goes along with government power, whoever's wielding it, is the best possible check we could have on the growing autocracy that's going on in this country.
Eric, did you see the change from 60 votes for confirmation to 51 simply just a sign of our times, that politics evolves and we're just going to get more partisan nowadays, so trimming that down is just a natural part of this evolution?
I think it's one more sad sign of our times. Yes, it is a sign of the times. I think the Democrats' ultimate calculation was, yes, we could forego the filibuster this time to preserve that right for the next Trump nominee. But then the Republicans would have just gone nuclear the next time, that the Republicans were prepared to go nuclear whenever they needed to go nuclear. The history David recites is largely very correct history. I mean, one feature of our times these days, Dominic, is what I call situational ethics and feigned moral outrage. And whichever party has the ability to pull a power play will do it, and the other side will go into feigned outrage. But the Democrats under Harry Reid played this card. A lot of this animosity dates back to the Teddy Kennedy speech against Robert Bork about Robert Bork's America, which was, I mean, it had as much American carnage in it as Donald Trump's acceptance speech had in it. We've been heading down this track for 3 decades now in terms of the politicization of Supreme Court appointments and those confirmation processes. So is it a sad day? Yes, it's a sad day, but it's a sad day a long time in coming, and neither party can claim any moral high ground here. Real quickly, in terms of Michael Bennet, I've seen pretzels that were a lot less twisted up than how Bennet has handled this particular process. We all opined immediately upon the announcement of the Gorsuch appointment that Michael Bennet was on the hottest of hot seats. I think his calculation was that there was no win in going all in with either side, and he would make himself as inconsequential as possible, wait till the last minute as possible. I do not see how he squares his comments in introducing Gorsuch at the first hearing and talking about how 2 wrongs never, ever make a right. I believe that's a direct quote. And then yet opposing the filibuster, but opposing the nomination in today's confirmation vote. If there's a intellectual logic to it, I'm missing it. And lastly, this is our second Coloradan in the history of the Supreme Court. So that's not nothing, and congratulations to Justice Gorsuch.
Natasha, let's get back to the Bennett point. What do you think Coloradans, his constituents, are going to think of kind of the balance, the tightrope walk he made, that between not going against the filibuster but also not voting for the Coloradan? And it's not just about being a Coloradan, but clearly he was trying to have his cake and eat it too. Do constituents remember this?
I think they do. I think there's certainly a lot of campaigns right now to have people remember this for the next election. In this particular case, though, I don't think people will vote for or against him because of it. Simply because the news cycle in the last few months has been so robust and so crazy that I don't think that this will be the last thing that people think of when they get into the voting booth with Bennett. I think that there's going to be a lot more things happening before then. I do think he's probably the most relieved senator, perhaps, that this is done, but the most relieved group of people are probably the court themselves, who have been operating since February 2016 without a justice. And this gives them an opportunity to go back to their full strength and to continue business as usual. And it will be that. So it's been a long time since we had a full court. Within days of him putting on the robes, he will be looking at a case involving state rights and religion, which is always a controversial topic in this country. So he's not going to have a lot of time to sort of rest and get used to his surroundings. He'll be at work right away.